The solar storm hit exactly when the scientists predicted it would. Jake stood in the main engineering bay with everyone else, watching the displays that showed the massive wave of energy rushing toward their small station. Outside the windows, space itself seemed to glow with dangerous light. "Storm front reaching outer perimeter now," Lisa Carter announced from her station. "Energy levels are climbing fast." Vera stood at the main control panel, her silver hands moving quickly over the controls. "Beginning harmonic matrix activation," she said. "All shield generators coming online in sequence." The station shuddered as the first waves of solar energy hit their outer defenses. Emergency lights flickered, and Jake could hear the deep hum of the shield. Generators straining against forces they were never designed to handle. "Shield matrix at 20% power," Ben Torres called out. All generators responding normally. "Harmonic resonance is building," Vera said, her eyes focused on the complex displays in front of her. "We need perfect synchronization now." Kath sat at a monitoring station with Emma Walsh, both children watching readouts that showed the energy patterns flowing around the station. "Mom, the frequency in Section 7 is shifting," Kath called out. "I see it," Vera replied. "Tony, adjust the phase alignment on Generator 7 by 0.3 degrees. "Adjusting now," Tony said, his hand steady despite the tension. The storm's energy was growing stronger by the minute. Jake watched the displays show power levels that would have been impossible to imagine just days ago. If their plan failed, now the station would be torn apart in seconds. "Shield matrix at 50%, Ben announced. "Energy absorption is climbing, but still within safe limits." "That's not possible," Lisa said, staring at her readings. "We should be burning out." "Systems left and right. The harmonic matrix is working," Vera explained without taking her eyes off her controls. "Instead of fighting the energy, we're guiding it around us and channeling some of it into our power collectors." Jake looked at the power collection displays and couldn't believe what he was seeing. "We're actually gaining power from this storm." "The energy has to go somewhere," Vera said. "Better in our systems than destroying them." The station shook harder as the storm reached its peak intensity. Jake had to hold onto a console to keep from falling. Around the engineering bay, people gripped their stations and watched their instruments with fierce concentration. "Storm at maximum intensity," Lisa announced. "This is it. Shield matrix at full power," Ben called out. All generators holding steady. For a moment, everything seemed to balance on the edge of disaster. The displays showed energy levels that were off the charts, but somehow the harmonic matrix was holding. The station groaned and shook, but it did not break. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of just surviving the storm, the station began to thrive. The power collectors were drawing in so much energy that backup systems started coming online automatically. Lights grew brighter, air circulation improved, and even damaged systems began repairing themselves. "This is incredible," Tony said, watching these displays. "We're running at 150% normal power, and everything is stable. The harmonic matrix is using the storm's energy to strengthen our systems," Vera explained. "It's like the difference between standing against a river and learning to swim with it." Captain Anderson, who had been watching everything with tense silence, finally spoke. "How long can we maintain this?" "As long as the storm lasts," Vera said. "And when it passes, we'll have charged our power systems far beyond normal capacity." Jake watched the displays and shook his head in amazement. 3 weeks ago, they had been struggling with failing systems and power shortages. Now they were riding a solar storm like surfers on a wave. "Storm intensity beginning to decrease," Lisa announced. "We're past the peak." As the storm's power slowly diminished, Vera began adjusting the harmonic matrix to maintain stability. "Reducing shield matrix power in sequence," she said. "We need to step down gradually to avoid feedback." The process took another hour, but finally the storm passed completely. The displays showed normal space outside, and the station systems settled into their regular rhythms. But everything was different now. The power levels were higher, the systems ran more smoothly, and even the air seemed cleaner. All systems. Showing green, Ben announced. Not only did we survive, we're running better than we have in years. A cheer went up from the engineering team. People hugged each other and laughed with relief and joy. Jake found himself grinning so wide his face hurt. Captain Anderson walked over to Vera, who was still at the control panel making final adjustments. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, he said. You didn't just save the station. You made it better. We made it better, Vera corrected. I could not have done this alone. Your people worked with me, trusted me, and made it possible. Still, Anderson said, I owe you more than I can ever repay. Vera smiled. You already repaid me. You gave me and my son a home. As the celebration continued around them, Jake noticed something troubling on one of the long-range sensor displays. A ship was approaching the station, and its configuration looked military. Captain, Jake said quietly, pointing to the display, we have company. Anderson looked at the sensor readings and frowned. That's a Zephyrian military vessel. What are they doing here? The joy in the engineering bay faded as people noticed the approaching ship. Vera looked at the display and her face went pale. They have come for me, she said quietly. What do you mean? Ben asked. The Zephyrian military, Vera said. They claim I stole government secrets when I fled our homeworld. They have been hunting Emmy. Keth moved closer to his mother, fear clear in his bright eyes. Mom, what will they do to us? I don't know, little one, Vera said. Putting her arm around her son, the communication system crackled to life with an incoming message. Colony Station Nexus 7. This is Commander Zeph of the Zephyrian Defense Force. We demand the immediate surrender of the criminal Vera and her offspring. Captain Anderson activated the response channel. Commander Zeph, this is Captain Anderson. What are the charges against this person? Theft of classified military technology and treason against the Zephyrian state, came the reply. Surrender them immediately or face the consequences. Anderson looked around the engineering bay at his crew. Every face showed the same determination. I'm sorry, Commander, but that's not going to happen. Vera is under the protection of this station and the Human Colonial Authority. You are harboring a known criminal, the Zephyrian commander said. Return her to us, or we will take her by force. The hell you will, Tony Walsh said angrily. She just saved all our lives. Captain, Vera said quietly, you should not risk your people for me. Perhaps it would be better if I surrender myself. No, Ben Torres said firmly. You're part of this crew now. We don't abandon crew. That's right, Lisa added. You belong here. Jake stepped forward. Vera, what exactly did you supposedly steal? My own research, Vera said bitterly. I developed new harmonic engineering techniques, but when the government fell, the military classified all my work. They said it belonged to the state, not to me. You mean the same techniques you just used to save this station? Anderson asked. Yes, Vera said. They want to use my knowledge for weapons. I refused to help them, so I became a criminal. Anderson activated the communication channel. Again. Commander Zeph, I'm afraid we have a problem. The person you're calling a criminal just saved 2,000 human lives using her own research. As far as I'm concerned, that makes her a hero, not a criminal. Your opinion is irrelevant, the Zephyrian commander replied. Surrender her immediately or we will board your station by force. Anderson looked at his crew. What do you say, people? Do we fight? Damn right we fight, Tony said. She's one of us now, Ben added. Nobody threatens our family, Lisa said firmly. Jake watched the faces around him and felt pride swell in his chest. These people had come together to face a natural disaster, and now they were ready to face a military threat to protect one of their own. Commander Zeph, Anderson said into the communicator. I have 2,000 people on this station who just watched Vera risk her life to save theirs. If you want to take her, you'll have to go through all of us. This is your final warning, the Zephyrian commander said. Surrender the criminal or face the consequences. Then I guess we'll face the consequences, Anderson replied, cutting. The communication. The Zephyrian ship moved closer to the station, its weapon systems powering up. Jake looked at Vera and saw her standing straighter, no longer afraid but determined. Around her, the human crew prepared for whatever came next. Whatever happens, Jake said to Vera, you're not alone anymore. No, Vera replied, looking around at the faces of her friends and colleagues. I am not alone. 3 weeks after the power coupling crisis, Vera had become a regular part of the engineering team. She worked alongside Ben Torres and the other engineers, helping them identify and fix the stress patterns that had been slowly damaging the cell. Station systems. The crew had grown comfortable with her presence, and even Tony Walsh now asked for her opinion on difficult problems. Keth had also found his place on the station. He spent his days in the small school area with the other children, and he had become friends with Emma Walsh, Tony's daughter. Emma was curious about Zephyrian culture, and Keth enjoyed teaching her words in his native language. Jake was in his office reviewing maintenance schedules when Lisa Carter burst through his door, her face pale with worry. Jake, we have a problem, she said. A big one. What's wrong? Jake asked, standing up from his desk. Solar storm, Lisa said. The biggest one we've seen in decades. It's heading straight for our system, and it'll be here in 18 hours. Jake felt his blood run cold. Solar storms were dangerous for any space station, but for an aging facility like Nexus 7, they could be deadly. How bad are we talking? The storm's energy output is off the charts, Lisa said. Our current shield systems are rated for normal solar activity, but this is anything but normal. The computer models show we have maybe a 30% chance of surviving if we just rely on our existing defenses. What about evacuation? Jake asked. Captain Anderson is considering it, but it would mean abandoning the station completely. All the research, all the supplies, everything we've built here will be lost. And we might not have enough transport ships to get everyone off in time. Jake followed Lisa to the main engineering bay, where the entire team was gathered around. The central display screen. The image showed the massive solar storm approaching their system, like a wall of destructive energy. Ben Torres was studying the readouts with a grim expression. I've run the calculations 3 times, he said. Our shields can handle maybe 60% of this storm's power. When they fail, the radiation will cook everything electronic on the station. What about reinforcing the shields? Asked Tony Walsh. We'd need to triple their power output, Ben replied. And even if we could do that, the shield generators would burn out within minutes. Captain Anderson entered the engineering bay, his face showing the weight of command. Give me options, people. Can we ride this out, or do we evacuate? Evacuation would take at least 12 hours, Lisa said. And we'd have to leave behind anyone who couldn't make it to the transport ships in time. That's not acceptable, Anderson said firmly. This is home for 2,000 people. We don't abandon home. Vera had been standing quietly at the edge of the group, studying the storm data on her tablet. Now she stepped forward. Captain, there might be another option. Everyone turned to look at her. What do you have in mind? Anderson asked. The problem with your current shield system is that it tries to absorb the storm's energy, Vera said. But what if instead of absorbing it, we redirect it? Redirect it how? Ben asked. By creating a harmonized shield matrix, Vera explained. Instead of one large shield trying to stop all the energy, we use multiple smaller shields that work together to bend the energy around the station. Lisa frowned. That would require perfect synchronization between all the shield generators. One mistake, and the whole system would collapse. Yes, Vera agreed. But if it works, it would not only protect the station, it would actually strengthen our power systems by channeling some of the storm's energy into our collectors. That's impossible, Tony said. The energy levels are too high. It would fry every system on the station. Not if we use Zephyrian harmonic principles, Vera said. My people learn to work with energy flows instead of fighting them. We can make the storm's power work for us instead of against us. Captain Anderson looked around the room at his senior staff. How long would this take to implement? If we start now and work through the night, we might have it ready when the storm hits, Vera said. But it will require every engineer on the station working together. And it would require you to trust me completely. What happens if it doesn't work? Anderson asked. Then we lose everything, Vera said honestly. But if we evacuate, we lose everything anyway. At least this way, we have a chance to save our home. The captain was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the engineering bay was silent except for the hum of machinery and the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. How confident are you that this will work? I have never tried it on this scale, Vera admitted. But the principles are sound, and your people are skilled enough to make it happen. Anderson looked at his engineering team. What do you think? Ben Torres spoke first. 3 weeks ago, I would have said this was crazy. But I've seen what Vera can do. If she thinks it's possible, then I'm willing to try. Same here, Lisa said. The evacuation plan has too many risks anyway. Tony Walsh nodded. My daughter lives on this station. I'd rather fight for it than run from it. One by one, the other engineers voiced their support. Captain Anderson watched their faces and saw determination instead of fear. All right, he said finally. We're staying and fighting. Vera, you're in charge of the technical implementation. Ben, coordinate the work crews. Lisa, make sure we have all the parts and equipment we need. What about the children? Emma Walsh asked. She had been standing with Kef near the back of the group, listening to the adult conversation. The children will stay in the safest part of the station, Anderson said. If our plan works, they'll be fine. If it doesn't work, then nowhere will be safe anyway. Kef looked up at his mother. Can I help? This is very dangerous work, Vera said. I need you to stay safe. But I know your equations, Kef said. I can help calculate the harmonic frequencies. Emma stepped forward. I want to help too. This is my home. Captain Anderson looked at the two children. If your parents agree, you can help with calculations and monitoring. But you stay in the protected areas at all times. The next 8 hours were the most intense of Jake's life. The entire station became a massive construction project as engineers worked to install additional shield generators and modified as engineers worked to install additional shield generators and modified the shield generators. Power distribution systems. Vera moved from group to group, explaining the harmonic principles and helping solve technical problems. Jake found himself coordinating between different work crews, making sure everyone had the tools and parts they needed. He watched Vera work with growing admiration. She never seemed to rest, never seemed to lose patience, and never seemed to doubt that their plan would work. How does she do it? Jake asked Ben during a brief break. She thinks differently than we do, Ben replied. We see energy as something to control and contain. She sees it as something to dance with. And you think this will work? I think if anyone can make it work, it's her, Ben said. She's already saved this station once. Maybe she can do it again. As the solar storm grew closer, the work became more frantic. Engineers crawled through maintenance tunnels, installing new connections and calibrating equipment. The children helped by running calculations and monitoring system readings from the safety of the command center dot with 2 hours left before the storm hit. Vera called for a final systems check. Every shield generator was online, every power coupling was balanced, and every harmonic frequency was synchronized. All systems show green, Lisa reported. We're as ready as we can be. Vera stood at the main control panel, her hands moving over the controls with practiced precision. When the storm hits, we'll have about 30 seconds to get the harmonic matrix stabilized. If we miss that window, the feedback will destroy everything. No pressure, Tony muttered, but he was smiling. Captain Anderson activated the station-wide communication system. Attention all personnel. In 1 hour, we will face the greatest challenge in this station's history. But we face it together, as a community, as a family. We will not run from this storm. We will stand against it and show the universe that nothing can break the human spirit. Jake looked around the engineering bay at the faces of his friends and colleagues. They were scared, but they were determined. And at the center of it all was Vera, the alien refugee who had become their savior. Whatever happens, Jake said quietly, we gave it everything we had. Yes, Vera replied. And sometimes that is enough. Outside the station, the solar storm continued its approach, a wall of destructive energy that would test everything they had built and everything they believed in. The next morning, Vera arrived at the engineering department early, with Kef beside her carrying a small bag of tools. Ben Torres was already there, checking the overnight system reports. He looked up when they entered, but did not smile. You're here early, Ben said. I am used to starting work before dawn, Vera replied. Where would you like me to begin? Ben handed her a tablet with diagnostic readings. These are the systems that have been giving us trouble. You can start by reviewing the data, but remember, you don't touch anything without my approval. Vera took the tablet and studied the information. Kef sat quietly in a corner, reading from a small device. Jake arrived a few minutes later and found the engineering bay unusually quiet. How's it going? Jake asked Ben. She's been reading those reports for an hour, Ben said. Haven't heard a word from her. Maybe she's learning how our systems work, Jake suggested. Or maybe she's in over her head, Ben replied. These aren't Zephyrian systems. They're human engineering, built tough and practical. Other engineers started arriving for their shifts. Jake noticed how they glanced at Vera and whispered to each other. Some seemed curious, but most looked skeptical or annoyed. Great, muttered Tony Walsh, one of the younger engineers. Now we're babysitting aliens. Keep your voice down, Ben warned. But Jake could tell he was not entirely happy about the situation either. Vera looked up from the tablet. I have questions about these power fluctuations in Section 12. The pattern suggests harmonic interference. But the readings don't match what I would expect from standard circuit design. Section 12 has been fine for months, Tony said. Maybe you're reading the data wrong. Perhaps, Vera said calmly. Could we go look at the actual systems? Sometimes visual inspection reveals things that data cannot show. Ben sighed. Fine, but I'm coming with you, and you don't touch anything. They walked through the station corridors to Section 12, which housed some of the environmental control systems. The area seemed normal, with the usual hum of machinery and the soft glow of status lights. Vera moved slowly through the area, listening carefully and watching the indicator panels. She stopped at a large control unit and frowned. This unit is running hot, she said. The cooling system is working harder than it should. It's within normal parameters, Tony said, checking his scanner. Temperature is fine. Temperature is fine now, Vera corrected. But the system is compensating for something. There is extra. Heat being generated somewhere. She knelt down and examined the connections at the base of the unit. These coupling joints are stressed. The metal is expanding and contracting more than it should. Then looked at the joints. They appeared normal to him. I don't see anything wrong. The damage is inside the coupling, Vera explained. The repeated stress is creating microfractures that will eventually cause complete failure. How can you tell that just by looking? Tony asked with obvious disbelief. Because I have seen this type of failure before, Vera said. On my home world, we learn to recognize the early warning signs. If you ignore them, the failure comes suddenly and can damage other systems. Ben was about to respond when an alarm started blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and the station's communication system crackled to life. All personnel, this is Captain Anderson. We have a critical power failure in Section 15. All engineering teams, report to emergency stations immediately. Jake felt his stomach drop. Section 15 was near the main life support systems. Come on, he said to the group. We need to get there fast. They ran through the corridors toward Section 15. Other people were moving quickly, too, some heading toward emergency shelters, others toward their duty stations. When they reached Section 15, they found chaos. The main power coupling for the life support systems had failed catastrophically. Smoke was pouring from the damaged unit, and the backup systems were struggling to maintain air circulation and temperature control. How long do we have? Captain Anderson asked Lisa Carter, who was coordinating the emergency response. The backup systems can handle life support for maybe 6 hours, Lisa said. But if we can't get the main power restored, we'll have to start evacuating people to the emergency shelters. What about repairs? Anderson asked. The main coupling is completely destroyed, Ben said after examining the damage. We'd need to replace the entire unit, and that would take at least 12 hours, assuming we have the right parts. Do we have the parts? Anderson asked. We have some replacement components, Lisa said, but nothing that matches this exact configuration. We'd have to jury-rig something, and there's no guarantee it would work. Jake looked at the destroyed coupling and felt a chill. The damage was exactly what Vera had described happening in Section 12. Captain, we need to let Vera look at this. The alien? Anderson frowned. This is not the time for experiments. She predicted this exact type of failure, Jake said. She warned us about it this morning. Ben looked uncomfortable. She said the coupling in Section 12 was stress, but this is Section 15. Same type of coupling, Jake said. Same type of stress pattern. Anderson looked at Vera, who had been standing quietly with Kef beside her. Can you fix this? I cannot repair the damaged unit, Vera said. But I might be able to create a workaround that could restore power while you get proper replacement parts. What kind of workaround? Lisa asked. I would need to reroute power through the secondary distribution network and use the backup couplings to share the load, Vera explained. It would not be a permanent solution, but it could give you time to make proper repairs. That's not possible, Tony said. The secondary network isn't designed to handle that much power. Not with standard human engineering, Vera agreed. But if we modify the load distribution and add harmonic dampeners, we can make it work safely. Anderson looked at his senior staff. How long would this take? If my approach works, perhaps 2 hours, Vera said. If it does not work, you will be no worse off than you are now. And if it goes wrong? Anderson asked. Then we could lose the secondary systems too, Vera admitted. But if we do nothing, you will lose life support in 6 hours anyway. The captain was quiet for a moment. Around them, the emergency lights continued to flash, and the air was getting warmer as the backup system strained to keep up. Do it, Anderson said finally. But I want every senior engineer watching every move she makes. For the next 2 hours, Vera worked with intense concentration. She directed the human engineers to reroute power lines and modify connection points, while she calculated load distributions and harmonic patterns. Kes stayed close to his mother, sometimes handing her tools or holding diagnostic equipment. Jake watched the other engineers as they worked with Vera. At first, they were skeptical and reluctant, but as they saw her knowledge and skill, their attitudes began to change. She explained every step of her process and answered their questions with patience and detail. The power flow needs to be balanced exactly, Vera told Ben as they worked on a critical connection. Too much load on one side will create the same harmonic stress that caused the original failure. How do you calculate the exact balance? Ben asked. Part calculation, part intuition, Vera said. You learn to feel the rhythm of the power flow. Each system has its own signature. Tony Walsh, who had been the most skeptical, found himself working closely with Vera on the harmonic dampeners. "This is actually brilliant," he said quietly. "I've never seen anyone approach power distribution this way. Different worlds, different solutions," Vera said. "But the principles of energy are the same everywhere." When the work was finished, Vera stepped back and nodded to Captain Anderson. "We are ready to test the system." "What happens if it doesn't work?" Anderson asked. "Then we shut it down immediately and return to backup power," Vera said. "But I believe it will work." Anderson gave the order, and the modified system came online. The emergency lights stopped flashing, and the normal hum of station operations resumed. The life support system stabilized, and the air began to cool back to normal temperature. "All systems show green," Lisa reported. "Power distribution is stable, and all safety parameters are within acceptable limits." A cheer went up from the engineering team. Ben Torres walked over to Vera and extended his hand. "I owe you an apology." "And a thank you." "You owe me nothing," Vera replied, shaking his hand. "We worked together to solve a problem." "That is what engineers do." Captain Anderson approached Vera. "How long will this solution hold?" "If properly maintained, it should be stable for weeks," Vera said. "Long enough for you to get proper replacement parts and make permanent repairs." "And the other systems you mentioned?" "The ones with similar stress patterns?" "I can help you." "Identify and fix those too," Vera said, "before they fail." Anderson nodded. "I think we need to talk about making your position here more permanent." As the emergency teams dispersed and normal operations resumed, Jake found himself standing with Vera and Keth near the repaired systems. "How does it feel?" Jake asked Vera. "Like I'm an engineer again," she replied. "Not just a refugee, but someone who can contribute and help." Keth looked up at his mother with pride. "Everyone was watching you work. They saw how smart you are." "They saw that different does not mean wrong," Vera said. "And sometimes different can be exactly what is." Jake woke up early the next morning and made coffee for himself and tea for his guests. Vera and Keth had slept in his spare room, and he could hear them talking quietly in their own language. When they came out for breakfast, Vera looked rested, but nervous. "I have been thinking about what you said yesterday," Vera told Jake as she sipped her tea. "Are you sure about this? I do not want to cause trouble for you." "The only trouble would be if I didn't try," Jake replied. "I've been working on this station for 6 years, and I know we have problems that need solving. Maybe you can help with that." After breakfast, Jake led Vera and Keth through the station toward the engineering section. The corridors were busy, with people heading to work, and Jake noticed how they stared at Vera. Some looked curious, others suspicious, and a few seemed openly hostile. "Ignore them," Jake said quietly. "They just need time to get used to new faces." They reached the engineering department, a large area filled with computer screens, diagnostic equipment, and the constant hum of machinery. Jake found Lisa Carter at her workstation, studying readouts from the station's main systems. "Lisa, I need to talk to you about something important," Jake said. Lisa looked up from her screen and her eyes widened when she saw Vera. "Jake, what's going on? Who is this?" "This is Vera," Jake said. "She's an engineer, and I think she might be able to help us with some of our problems." Lisa stood up and crossed her arms. "Jake, you know I can't just hire random people. There are procedures, background checks, security clearances, and she's not even human." "I'm not asking you to hire her," Jake said. "I'm asking you to let her. Look at our systems. As a consultant." "A consultant?" Lisa's voice rose. "Jake, this is crazy. We can't just let an alien access our critical systems. What if she's a spy? What if she sabotages something?" Vera stepped forward. "I understand your concerns. If I were in your position, I would be cautious too. But I am not here to cause harm. I am here because I need work to feed my child." Lisa looked at Keth, who was standing quietly beside his. "Mother, look, I'm sorry about your situation, but I have rules to follow. The station's security depends on these systems. Jake pulled Lisa aside. Lisa, remember last month when the power grid kept fluctuating? And the week before that when the environmental controls went haywire? Our engineers couldn't figure out what was wrong. We fixed those problems, Lisa said. No, we put patches on them, Jake corrected. The real problems are still there. I can feel it in the way the station vibrates. I can hear it in the way the systems strain. We're heading for a major failure. And when it happens, people could die. Lisa frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying we need help, Jake said. And maybe the help we need is standing right there. Lisa looked back at Vera, who was explaining something to Keth in their own language. Even if I wanted to help, I can't authorize this. You'd need approval from Captain Anderson. Then let's go see him, Jake said. An hour later, they stood in Captain Roy Anderson's office. The captain was a tough man in his 50s who had been running the station for 8 years. He listened to Jake's explanation with a stern expression. Let me get this straight, Anderson said. You want me to let an alien refugee examine our critical systems because you think we're about to have a major failure? That's right, Jake said. And you base this on what? A feeling? Some vibrations you think you hear? Jake took a deep breath. Captain, I've been maintaining systems for 20 years. I started on mining stations when I was 18. I know when something is wrong, even if I can't prove it with numbers. Anderson looked at Vera. And you think you can solve problems that trained human engineers can't? I do not know if I can solve them, Vera replied honestly, but I can try. My people have different ways of looking at energy flow and system integration. Sometimes a fresh perspective reveals things that familiarity misses. Your people, Anderson repeated. The same people who just lost a civil war? Vera's face tightened. Yes, the same people who built cities that lasted for thousands of years before politics. Tore them apart. Anderson was quiet for a long moment. Even if I agree to this, it would have to be temporary. A trial period. And you would work under constant supervision. I understand, Vera said. And if anything goes wrong, if there's even a hint of sabotage or security breach, you and your son will be off this station immediately. I understand that too. Anderson looked at Jake. You're putting your reputation on the line for this. If she screws up, it reflects on you. I know, Jake said. But I think this is the right thing to do. The captain sighed. Against my better judgment, I'll authorize a 2-week trial period. But she works with a human partner at all times, and she doesn't touch anything critical without multiple approvals. Thank you, Captain, Vera said. Don't thank me yet, Anderson replied. Prove you're worth the risk. Later that day, Jake brought Vera to meet Ben Torres, the station's senior technician. Ben was a good man, but he had strong opinions about protocol and security. I don't like this, Ben said bluntly. We don't know anything about her background or her real skills. Then let's find out, Jake said. Give her something to look at. Something that's been giving us trouble. Ben led them to a section of the station where the lighting had been flickering for months. We replaced the circuits 3 times, but the problem keeps coming back. Vera studied the wall panels for a few minutes, then asked for a diagnostic scanner. She ran it over the circuits, frowning at the readings. The problem is not in the circuits, she said finally. It is in the power distribution. You have a feedback loop that creates resonance in the electrical flow. That's impossible, Ben said. We checked the power distribution. You checked the main lines, Vera replied. But you did not check the harmonic interactions between the different subsystems. In Zephyrian engineering, we call this ghost current. It builds up slowly and causes exactly this kind of intermittent failure. She pointed to a junction box that looked perfectly normal. The problem is there. If you open that panel, you will find that the connections are slowly degrading due to harmonic stress. Ben looked skeptical, but opened the panel anyway. Inside, several connections showed signs of heat damage and corrosion. How did you know that? Because I have seen it before, Vera said. This type of failure pattern is common when different engineering philosophies are mixed without proper integration. Ben stared at the damaged connections. We would have found this eventually. Yes, Vera agreed. But by then, the damage might have spread to other systems. And if it happened during a critical situation, it could have caused a cascade failure. Jake looked at the scorched connections and felt a chill. How many other places might have this problem? I would need to examine your entire power grid to know for sure, Vera said. But if this station was built using standard human engineering principles, then modified with newer technologies, there could be dozens of similar issues. Ben was quiet for a long moment. It would take weeks to check everything. Not if you know what to look for, Vera said. I can teach you to recognize the signs. Then we can work together to fix the problems before they become dangerous. That evening, Jake sat with Vera and Kef in the station's small cafeteria. Word had spread about the alien engineer, and people were staring openly now. How do you feel about today? Jake asked Vera. Hopeful, she replied. But also worried. I saw how that man Ben looked at me. He thinks I am trying to show off or make him look bad. Ben's a good guy, Jake said. He just needs time to trust you. Time is something we may not have, Vera said quietly. If your systems are as unstable as I think they are, then we need to work fast. Kef tugged on his mother's sleeve. Mom, does this mean we can stay? Vera looked at her son's hopeful face. For now, little one. But we must prove ourselves every day. Jake watched the mother and son, and he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He had started something that could change everything, but he did not yet know if it would be for better or worse. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished checking the water recycling system on Level 3 of Colony Station Nexus 7. The station was old and cranky, always needing repairs, but it was home to over 2,000 humans living. On the edge of known space, Jake had been the maintenance supervisor here for 6 years, and he knew every pipe, wire, and bolt that held the place together. He was walking back to his office when he heard soft crying coming from behind the waist. Processing unit. Jake stopped and listened. It was not the usual sound of machinery breaking down. This was someone in pain. He followed the sound and found a small figure hunched against the metal wall. The child looked up at Jake with large, bright blue eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. Jake had seen this species before, but never up close. The kid was Zephyrian, with pale silver skin and delicate features that made him look fragile. His clothes were clean but worn, and his thin frame suggested he had not been eating well. Hey there, Jake said softly, kneeling down to the child's level. What's wrong, kid? The young Zephyrian looked scared for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. Please, sir, I need help. My mom needs work, any work. She will do anything. Even clean toilets. Jake felt his heart squeeze. He knew how proud the Zephyrians were. They had built some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. For this child to say his mother would clean toilets meant they were desperate beyond words. What's your name, son? Jake asked. Keth, the boy replied, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. My mom is Vera. She was an engineer on our home world, but everything went bad. There was fighting and war, and we had to leave. Nobody will give her work because she is alien. They say we are refugees and we have no rights. Jake sat down on the floor next to Kef. The cold metal felt familiar. Against his back. How long have you two been here on the station? 3 weeks, Kef said. We sleep in the cargo bay when security is not looking. Mom tries to find work every day, but they always say no. She speaks perfect human language and knows so much about machines, but they just see her skin and her eyes and say no. The boys? Voice cracked as he continued. I heard her crying last night. She thinks I was sleeping, but I heard her. She said she failed me as a mother. She said maybe we should have stayed and died in the war instead of living like this. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Not at the boy or his mother, but at the system that could leave people in such despair. He had seen it before with human refugees from the outer colonies. Fear and prejudice seemed to follow people wherever they went. "Tell me about your mom," Jake said. "What kind of engineer was she?" Keth's eyes lit up a little. "She designed power systems for cities. She could make energy flow perfectly, so nothing was wasted. She knew how to fix things that other people said were broken forever. She taught me about circuits and energy patterns, but I am not smart like her." "I bet you're smarter than you think," Jake said with a smile. "Has she tried to apply for work in the engineering department here?" "Yes, but they said she needs papers and permits and things we do not have. They said even if she had those things, they would not hire an alien for important work. They said she could maybe get a job cleaning waste systems if she was lucky." Jake stood up and offered his hand to Keth. "Come on, let's go find your mom. I want to meet her." Keth looked surprised. "You want to meet her?" "But she is just an alien. Refugee. She's a mother trying to take care of her son," Jake said firmly. "And if she's half as smart as you say she is, then maybe we can help each other." They walked through the station's corridors, past the shops and living quarters where humans went about their daily lives. Jake noticed how people stared at Keth, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. The boy kept his head down and stayed. Close to Jake's side, they found Vera in the lower market area, sitting on a bench with a small bag of belongings beside her. She was tall and elegant, with the same silver skin and glowing eyes as her son. Her clothes were simple but clean, and she held herself with dignity despite her circumstances. When she saw Keth approaching with a human stranger, she stood up quickly. "Keth, what are you doing? I told you to stay hidden." "Mom, this is Jake," Keth said in his own language, then switched to human speech. "He wants to help us." Vera looked at Jake with caution. "I am sorry if my son bothered you. He is just a child and does not understand how things work." "He didn't bother me," Jake said. "He told me you're an engineer. Is that true?" Vera's shoulders stiffened. "Yes, I was an engineer, but here I am nobody. Here I am just another refugee who should be grateful for any scraps people throw at me." Jake heard the pain and frustration in her voice. "What if I told you that this station needs good engineers? What if I told you that some of our systems are failing and our people don't know how to fix them?" "I would say you are being kind to a desperate alien," Vera replied. "But kindness does not change laws or give work permits." "Maybe not," Jake said. "But sometimes the right person in the right place can change everything." "Would you be willing to look at some of our systems, not as charity, but as a professional consultation?" Vera stared at him for a long moment. "Why would you do this? You do not know us. We are strangers from a failed world." Jake thought about his answer. "Because 6 years ago I was just a maintenance worker from Earth who needed a chance. Someone believed in me and gave me that chance. Maybe it's time I passed that along." He looked down at Keth, who was watching the conversation with hope in his bright eyes. "And because your son loves you enough to ask a stranger for help. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of person you are." Vera's eyes began to shine with tears, but she held them back. "If you are serious about this, then yes, I will look at your systems. But I warn you, I will not pretend to be less than I am just to make others comfortable." "Good," Jake said. "I wouldn't want you to. Tomorrow morning, I'll introduce you to our chief engineer. But tonight, you and Keth are coming home with me. I have a spare room, and I make a pretty good dinner." As they walked toward Jake's quarters, Keth slipped his small hand into Jake's larger one. "Thank you," the boy whispered. Jake squeezed the small hand gently. "Don't thank me yet, kid. We've got a lot of work ahead of us." He did not know it then, but those words would prove more true than he could imagine. The decision to help one desperate family would change not just their lives, but the future of human space itself.